Paul Catalina, Garrett Ross, and joined by Dave Wilson from ESPN.com. We saw Dave last week in Vegas. We did not see Dave in Dallas. The SEC, I guess, is afraid of the heat we're going to bring. I don't know. They didn't credential us, Dave, to go there. But a very interesting 2 weeks of media days, especially given the transference between those two conferences. Like, after you've been through all that and ingest all that information, do you have it? Like, do any kind of unique thoughts come out about the new world order in college football now that we've seen these conferences roll out their new teams?
Well, I will say I thought it was kind of interesting. It's first year in a while where there's sort of really no haze hanging over the Big 12. Everybody was kind of excited to be there. There's sort of kumbaya feeling, and then you go to the SEC and Texas is saying that they're going to be everybody's big game and they're going to be everybody's Super Bowl, and you already got people saying, Nick Saban on TV saying Texas isn't going to run the SEC, and it's just kind of a fun contrast in the sort of. You can see the split, in college football, the big schools going off in the direction, and the sort of the next tier right there, and it's sort of like it's just, you can see it. It's evident in the media days, and that's not a disrespect to all those Big 12 teams, because I love the Big 12, and I think it's going to be one of the most fun conferences, wide open. Especially when you take the top off with Texas and Oklahoma, two teams that historically have won a lot of games, particularly Oklahoma in the Big 12. But you just see that, the Big 12 is looser. It's more fun. It's more vibrant. The SEC is just all programmed up. It's like a TV show. And, of course, I work for the company that's putting it on. So we'll say enough there. But it's a unique contrast of styles.
Dave, SEC-wise, one of the things I think was interesting that everybody talked about A&M and Texas playing again, but A&M and Arkansas are also playing again, and that was a great rivalry, and they play, a home and home here and there throughout the time since Arkansas left the Southwest Conference and went to the SEC, but the rivalry essentially died then, except for, an occasional reunion tour. Do you think that one, especially if Arkansas winds up getting good eventually, can regain some of the glory it used to have?
Absolutely. I actually, in sort of smaller interview settings, I talked to a lot of folks over the past few days about Texas and Arkansas. You said A&M and Arkansas, and I know you meant Texas. It's fine. I just, for the listeners, making sure. But the Texas Arkansas, I mean, obviously the history there, it's very like a lot of these series are. It's obviously more tilted to the Horns, but the Hogs won the last two, even despite their own struggles. So I think it is one of those that it's going to come back. I mean, it's going to be a really hostile road environment for Texas when they go there, because as Steve Sarkisian told us, the same thing he said on the podium, which is, all I've heard is that people in Arkansas hate Texas more than they love themselves. And I asked Sam Pittman about that, and he said, he's right. They do. So it's, it's almost like, there's the tiers, right? There's Texas and Oklahoma hate each other. Well, A&M hates Texas more than, anybody else. And then Texas Tech doesn't like A&M. It's like there's all these different tiers, right? And so I think Texas Arkansas is really going to turn into, especially if the Hogs can sort of turn it around. And I think they're such an interesting team with Petrino back and calling the plays, and offense, he's pretty good at that. So it'll be a lot of fun to watch for sure. And I think that rivalry will return with some heat.
Yeah, what Sam Pittman was very realistic about their standing, and he's a guy who's been around the block. I mean, he knows, and he knows that his job is on the line. I would think that there's probably 5 coaches legitimately on the hot seat in the country, and he is certainly one of them. But he appears at peace with where his team is going in. Did you get that impression from him?
Yeah, I think he's more at peace at, like, look, I took over from a coach that went 4-20. We had success. 2 years ago, I was at AFCA, Football Coach Association, speaking as the coach of the year. 2 years later, I'm the hottest coach in the country, and not in a good way. And so he knows that. He knows where he stands. He knows he has to win. And if he doesn't, he told us, I've been fired 6 times. I know what it looks like. And he's like, but in the old days, he was always the O-line coach getting fired, and he got 5 days to get out, and he didn't get any money. He's like, look, the way it works now, if they wanted me to move on, if they want me to just go to the lake in Little Rock and send me on with $12 million, that's all right too. So he said he wouldn't be able to look at it that way if he didn't have success already. He knows that they're close. Last year they lost a lot of close games. He knows that they won the year before. And so I think he feels like there's a little bit of a base level of confidence. They've gone through some quarterbacks. They've gone through the offensive coordinators, and he didn't get that right last time. And so the one thing we know is Petrino will put up points. They got the Boise State quarterback at transfer that he wants to use like Lamar Jackson, which I'm blanking on the kid's name right now. I just talked to him yesterday, and I feel bad about that. But he's
Taylor Green.
Yes, a big kid, and he's like really excited. They're all very excited. A lot of those guys grew up, like Landon Jackson grew up in Texarkana as a Razorbacks fan, and he said, I was shocked when they hired Bobby Petrino, and I was like, well, you're not the only one.
Yeah, absolutely. How much of the conversation around A&M was about Texas joining the league, and how much of it was about how good they could actually be this year, or bad, I guess? But
I think there was there's going to be peppered with questions about the rivalry, but I think it's more of a, hey, what is the status of things right now? When I wrote a news story yesterday about talking to Elko about all the players that left. I think they lost about 30 and they gained 28. And they lost a lot of guys from that big recruiting class that really didn't pan out. And a lot of those guys got suspended and they're either out of football or on their second or third programs right now, which, shows you why Jimbo Fisher's not there anymore. But so there was a lot of questions about that. How did you calm the storm? And what does the roster look like? How do you feel about it? And he's, Elko is projecting a solid confidence. One thing that I heard, I did a big piece at the end of Jimbo's tenure there. And, I had players tell me, and we reported this, that there was a culture of individualism and there was no accountability. Like if you didn't go to workouts, there was not a lot of punishment. And it just felt like people were showing up and then leaving and nobody hung out. And they've had to genuinely go back to like 101 level team building. One of the offensive linemen said, one of the first things Coach Elko brought to us is that people are expected to be at the right place at the right time. And I'm just like, what are we talking about here? And that's what they're back to is like, we just need to create a team. And so they've created all this inter team competition where if your team doesn't perform, your entire group gets punished, and it leads to more accountability. And, a lot of times this year you hear all the buzzwords about, discipline and accountability. We're getting bigger, faster, stronger. We're getting more multiple on defense. They all say the same thing. But in this case, there was so much about like, look, we're trying to rebuild this team instead of just a group of highly rated recruits. And so I think they feel good about that. They feel like they're playing a different style of football with a different type of coach. And that's mostly what I got from them this week.
Dave, are you surprised that Oklahoma appears to be almost an afterthought moving into the SEC? And how do you view the Sooners and what their perceived success will be going forward as they embark on the SEC?
Yeah, I sort of joked that Oklahoma has been very deft at using Texas as a meat shield in this whole thing. They just they just kind of sneak in the door, and you're talking about a team that's won 50 conference championships and, at one point had won 6 or 7 Big 12 championships in a row just a couple of years ago. I think the fact that they went through the upheaval and lost all the players and lost Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams, and then they had to, they had such a bad first year under Venables. And, Venables said, look, I had to change everything the way I did. He thought he wired the team too tight. He thought the schedule didn't work. His meeting schedule changed. They break through last year to have a much better year. But all of a sudden, they have one of the worst schedules I've ever seen. I mean, one of the hardest schedules I've ever seen. And so I think there's a sobering approach to like, look, we don't know where we are in our rebuild. We have a new offensive coordinator in Seth Luttrell. We got a new quarterback in Jackson Arnold starting for the first time. We got new faces all over the defense. So it's really going to be tested. But they project that Oklahoma confidence. I mean, they've won a lot of games over the years. They don't expect to lose 3 games a year every year, and that's going to be kind of a sobering thing for them going into the SEC because you're playing a bowl game every weekend in essence.
Dave, when it comes to losing 3 games, they could still get in at 9-3. Like a 9-3 Big 12 team is probably out. A 9-3 SEC team, especially depending on who the 3 are, could in a reasonable circumstance get in.
Yeah. That's, I mean, you know, that we were looking at it, it's almost better to be the 3rd place team in the SEC because, you know, the 2nd place team has to play the conference championship game. And if they lose, then they have to, you know, they're turn around and play another game where the 3rd one misses that week. And so I think that'll be interesting. Now, a couple of coaches even said that they hope we don't see a situation where guys sort of tank a game so that they don't have to play in the championship game. But then at the same time, we had coaches say, look, Kirby Smart said there are many years it's harder to win a SEC championship than a national championship. You've seen our league's runner-up win national championships. And so he's like, winning an SEC championship still means a lot around here. And so, you know, we don't think we'll see that scenario, but we didn't think we were going to see all the opt-outs either when that stuff started.
Dave Wilson, ESPN.com. Dave, I know you got to go pick up your daughter. Thanks for hopping on the show. It was great to see you in Vegas last week, and I can't wait until our paths crossed again.
Yes, sir. I look forward to it. I appreciate you.
Dave Wilson, ESPN, one of the nicest guys in our business. Garrett, you got to see him last week. Yeah, great rider. Oh, my